It was a Saturday morning like any other, the kind that carried the quiet comfort of routine. The smell of coffee in the kitchen, my mother humming softly, and Ethan in my brother's room, lost in another endless video game session. I remember rolling my eyes at the sound of their laughter echoing down the hall. I loved him deeply, but there were moments when I wished he'd notice me more, when I longed for his eyes to leave the glowing screen and find me again. I didn't know that morning would change everything. The doorbell rang, a sound that usually meant neighbors or delivery, but when I opened it, my heart jumped. Standing there was Aunt Margaret, smiling from ear to ear, holding a small overnight bag. "Surprise, sweetheart," she said, her voice carrying that same warmth I remembered from childhood. "Aunt Margaret! Oh my God, I can't believe it!" I threw my arms around her. She smelled of travel and lavender lotion. She lived in Maplewood, a small town in Ohio where I had spent countless holidays as a child. Every Christmas, every summer break, I was there. It was my escape, a pocket of peace filled with laughter, cousins, and bonfire nights that felt like forever. I even had a boy back then, Daniel, who wasn't quite a boyfriend, but not just a friend either. The kind of connection that lingers like a secret melody. But that was another lifetime. "You should have called," I said, stepping aside to let her in. "We could have picked you up from the bus station." She shook her head, waving her hand. "Nonsense. I didn't want to trouble anyone. I just woke up and thought I missed them too much. So here I am." Her laughter filled the living room as she greeted my parents. The whole house came alive with conversation, voices overlapping, cups clinking, the familiar comfort of family filling the air. I could feel the tension of the week melting away. And then, in the middle of her stories about the bus ride and a crying baby who wouldn't stop, I heard footsteps in the hallway. Ethan. He appeared behind me, still holding a game controller, his hair messy, that boyish smirk half-formed. He wasn't expecting company, and he certainly wasn't expecting what would happen next. Aunt Margaret's voice rose above the laughter. "Oh, before I forget, Lauren, I have something for you." "For me?" I smiled. "What is it?" She grinned playfully. "A little delivery, from Daniel." My heart skipped. "Daniel?" She winked. "You know, that sweet boy next door. He's been asking about you since you left. Said he wanted to send you something." The room went silent for a split second, the kind of silence that swallows sound, because Ethan had heard. Aunt Margaret, still facing me, didn't see his expression change, the way his jaw clenched, the light in his eyes hardening. I could almost feel the shift in the air. He hated hearing another man's name connected to mine. I knew that look too well. "Oh, Aunt Margaret," I stammered, forcing a laugh. That's really not necessary." But she was already digging through her purse. "Nonsense! He was so insistent. Said you'd understand once you read it." And then she pulled out a small white envelope. It felt heavier than paper should feel. Before I could even touch it, Ethan took a few steps forward. His voice was calm, but I could hear the storm beneath it. "A letter?" he asked, his eyes locked on the envelope. "From who again?" Aunt Margaret finally turned around, startled to see him standing there. "Oh, hello, you must be—" "Ethan," I cut in quickly, my voice trembling. "My boyfriend." The word hung in the air like a fragile ornament that might shatter at any second. Aunt Margaret's smile faltered. "Oh," she said softly, realizing what she had done. I didn't know, but the damage was already done." Ethan reached out and took the envelope before I could stop him. His hand brushed mine, cold and tense. "So, Daniel's sending you letters now?" "Ethan, please. Who is he, Lauren?" His voice was sharper now. "An old friend?" I could feel everyone watching, my mother frozen in the doorway, my father setting down his cup, Aunt Margaret's face drained of color. I wanted to disappear. "Ethan," I whispered, "it's not what you think. He's just someone I used to know, from Maplewood, before you and I ever met." He didn't answer. He just kept staring at the letter as if it held every betrayal imaginable. Aunt Margaret tried to intervene, guilt flooding her voice. "I'm so sorry, Ethan. I didn't mean to cause any trouble. I truly didn't know." But he ignored her. Then, without warning, he tore open the envelope. I gasped. "Ethan." The sound of paper ripping was like a wound opening. He unfolded the letter, his eyes darting over the words, his expression darkening with each line. I didn't know what Daniel had written, but judging by Ethan's face, it wasn't just a friendly note. Probably something sentimental, something that sounded like a confession. He looked up at me, fury burning behind his silence. "Care to explain this?" And in that moment, surrounded by family, love, and laughter that had turned into stunned quiet, I felt my world tilt. I wanted to scream that it was innocent, that it was a misunderstanding, that Daniel belonged to a past life that had nothing to do with us. But Ethan's eyes told me none of that mattered. All it took was one letter, one name. And suddenly, the future I believed in began to crumble, right there, in the middle of my parents' living room. I had no idea that was only the beginning. For the rest of that afternoon, time felt suspended, like the air itself refused to move until someone spoke. But no one did. Ethan stood there holding the torn letter in his hands, his face pale with restrained anger. I could see the muscles in his jaw tighten, the way his chest rose and fell as he tried to keep control. I wanted to grab his hands, to beg him to listen, but he looked at me like I was someone else entirely. My aunt's voice trembled. "Lauren, I think I should—" "No, please," I interrupted softly. "It's okay." But nothing about that moment was okay. Ethan's eyes dropped back to the letter. He read another line, and something inside him snapped. "So this Daniel guy," he said slowly, his tone almost taunting. "He misses you. Says he can't stop thinking about your last night together." His eyes flicked up to me. "What night is that, Lauren?" I froze. Every word he spoke cut deeper than the one before. "Ethan, I swear, that was years ago, before you, before us. I didn't even know he'd written this. I haven't talked to him in forever." But the explanation came out weak, desperate, like the truth had already been decided without me. He held the letter up like evidence. "You expect me to believe that?" My voice cracked. "Yes, because it's the truth." Aunt Margaret stepped closer, her voice pleading now. "Ethan, please." I had no idea she was seeing anyone. If I'd known, I never would have brought the letter. He turned to her, his anger still simmering but softened by guilt. "It's not your fault, ma'am. It's hers." Those words stung, not because they were cruel, but because they came from the man who once promised he'd always trust me. I felt my father's hand touch my shoulder, a silent gesture that said, "Enough." My mother whispered my name, her eyes filled with worry, but I couldn't look away from Ethan. "Please," I whispered. "Not here. Let's just talk outside." For a moment, I thought he might agree. He stared at me, the letter trembling slightly in his hand, then nodded toward the door. We stepped out into the fading sunlight, the air heavy with everything unsaid. The street was quiet, except for the hum of cicadas. He turned to me. "So, tell me, who exactly is he?" I took a deep breath. Daniel was a neighbor, from Maplewood. We used to see each other when I visited Aunt Margaret's place during the summers. But that was before you and I ever met, before we were even a thought. He laughed bitterly. "And yet he's writing you letters like you belong to him." "I can't control what he feels," I said softly, "but I haven't done anything wrong." His eyes searched mine, desperate for a lie to catch on. "Nothing at all?" "Nothing." For a moment, silence. Then he looked away, rubbing his forehead. "Do you have any idea how that sounds? How it looks? A letter from another man? Full of memories you never told me about? I didn't think they mattered, I said, my voice trembling. Because they were gone. Because you were the only one who mattered now. He didn't answer. I reached out, my fingers brushing his sleeve, but he pulled back. The rejection felt physical, like a door slamming in my chest. Ethan, please, don't do this. You know me. He let out a long breath, his tone breaking for the first time. I thought I did. And with that, he turned and walked away. Down the driveway, across the street, until he was just a figure swallowed by distance. I stood there, frozen. The sound of his footsteps fading felt like the end of something I hadn't even realized was ending. When I went back inside, the house felt smaller, as if the walls themselves carried the echo of what had just happened. Aunt Margaret sat on the couch, her eyes red. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I never imagined. I sat beside her, forcing a smile that felt like glass. It's not your fault, Aunt Margaret. You couldn't have known. But I should have asked. When I saw him at the bus stop, he seemed so eager, so full of feelings. I thought it was sweet. I shook my head. Sometimes what feels sweet can destroy everything. The rest of the evening passed in fragments, voices blurring into murmurs, my father trying to lighten the mood, my mother quietly setting the table as if a normal dinner could fix what had shattered. But nothing felt normal anymore. That night, I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. The letter lay crumpled on my desk, its torn edges glowing faintly under the lamplight. I wanted to throw it away, to burn it, to erase it from existence. But part of me couldn't. It wasn't just paper. It was proof of how fragile love can be when doubt enters the room. I picked it up, unfolding it carefully, and read the words that had destroyed everything. Lauren, I still remember our last night together. The way you laughed, the way you made me feel like the world stopped. I don't know if I'll ever stop missing you. Maybe I'm foolish, but I had to tell you. Maybe someday, when you're free again, we can talk. When you're free again. The words twisted inside me like a knife. They sounded innocent and guilty all at once. No wonder Ethan had lost control. I pressed the letter to my chest and closed my eyes. It's not fair, I whispered to the dark. He doesn't even want me anymore. And yet, he's still ruining what I love. A tear slipped down my cheek, landing on the ink, smudging the last word. Talk. If only that's what Ethan had done. Talk to me instead of turning love into suspicion. But maybe it was already too late. Maybe that letter hadn't just carried Daniel's words, it had carried the end of us. I still remember the sound, that sharp, violent tear, as the envelope ripped open in Ethan's hands. It wasn't just paper. It was trust being split in two. Everything happened in slow motion. Aunt Margaret's laughter had faded into an uneasy quiet. My father had frozen halfway to his chair, and my mother stood near the kitchen door, her hand still holding a towel. The whole house seemed to hold its breath. Ethan, please, I whispered, stepping forward. Don't. But it was too late. He unfolded the letter and began to read. His eyes darted quickly, scanning line after line. I could see the shift in his face as confusion became disbelief. Disbelief became anger, and anger hardened into something colder, something I'd never seen in him before. He lifted his gaze, his expression blank, almost expressionless. So, he said quietly, you really had nothing to hide. The way he said it, soft, almost calm, was worse than if he'd screamed. Ethan, listen to me. Whatever's written there, it doesn't mean anything anymore. It's from the past. He gave a bitter laugh. From the past, right. So the guy who can't stop thinking about you is just a ghost from your past? He looked down again, reading aloud this time, each word like a verdict. I still remember the taste of that night, The way you smiled when I kissed you for the first time. My stomach twisted. Aunt Margaret gasped quietly. "Ethan, stop!" I cried. But he didn't. "I wonder if you ever think about me. I know you said things have changed, but I can't forget you, Lauren. You're still in my dreams. I'm still waiting." He dropped the letter on the table, his hand trembling. "Changed, huh?" His eyes met mine, burning. "Did you tell him you had someone else now? Did you tell him about me?" "Yes," I said quickly, desperate. "I told him months ago. I told him I had moved on, that I was with you. He didn't accept it. That's not my fault, Ethan." He paced the living room, running his fingers through his hair. I could feel the tension in every movement, the storm brewing behind his silence. "Not your fault," he said finally. "You think it's that simple? You think I can just read this," he pointed to the letter, "and pretend it doesn't exist? It wasn't meant for you to read." That came out louder than I expected. My voice broke halfway through the sentence. He turned to me, his face flushed. "Then who was it meant for, Lauren? Him? Were you planning to write back? Maybe tell him you miss him too?" Tears filled my eyes. "You're twisting everything. You don't even want to know the truth." "The truth?" he repeated, almost shouting now. "The truth is right here in my hands." "No," I said softly, stepping closer. "The truth is in me. And if you loved me, you'd look there first." That stopped him. For a brief second, he looked at me. Really looked, like he was trying to remember the girl he used to trust. But then his expression closed again, and the wall between us rebuilt itself, brick by brick. Aunt Margaret stood awkwardly, guilt washing over her face. "Ethan," she said, her voice trembling, "this isn't what it looks like, I swear. Daniel gave me that letter weeks ago. I didn't even read it. If I had known—" He turned to her, his voice softer but still cold. "You didn't know. I get it." But she did. I shook my head, the tears now falling freely. "That's not fair. You're not even giving me a chance." "I gave you my trust," he said. "That was your chance." For a moment, there was only silence again. Then he picked up the letter, folded it slowly, and slid it into his jacket pocket. "Keep it," I said weakly, "if it means that much to you. Maybe you'll see how wrong you are when you read it again." He didn't answer. He just looked at me one last time, not with love, but with the kind of pain that almost looks like hate, and walked out the door. The sound of it closing was like the end of a song that would never be played again. Aunt Margaret sat down, covering her face with her hands. "Lauren, I'm so sorry," she whispered through tears. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen." I knelt beside her, wrapping my arms around her shoulders. "I know, Aunt Margaret, you didn't do anything wrong, but deep down, I didn't believe my own words. Because even if she hadn't meant it, that letter had found its way into Ethan's hands, and nothing could undo that." Later that night, after she'd gone to bed, I found myself sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the spot where the letter had fallen. I could still see Ethan's face in my mind. The disbelief, the hurt, the anger that swallowed everything else. I tried to picture what would have happened if he had just trusted me, if he had taken my hand instead of the letter. Maybe we could have laughed about it. Maybe we could have turned it into one of those stories we'd tell years later. Remember when my aunt accidentally brought that ridiculous love letter? But no, that wasn't our story anymore. Our story had shifted into something fragile and painful. A love defined not by the things we said, but by the things we refused to hear. And as I sat there in the silence, I finally realized something cruel. Sometimes it's not betrayal that destroys love. It's the belief in betrayal. Ethan hadn't lost me because of what was written in that letter. He lost me because he believed it more than he believed me. The days after Ethan left felt like living inside a silence that had weight, something heavy pressing down on everything I did. The house still smelled of coffee in the mornings, my mother still talked to me about small things, but it all seemed distant, like I was underwater and the world above had moved on without me. Ethan didn't call, he didn't text. Not that night, not the next day, not even the week after. I kept waiting, convinced that he just needed time. He had a temper, he always did, but he also had a heart that softened easily once the anger settled. At least, that's what I used to believe. Every time my phone lit up, I felt a rush of hope that quickly turned into a hollow ache when it wasn't him. I scrolled through our old messages at night, rereading his words. "You're my calm in a world that never stops spinning." It felt ironic now, because the moment something shook us, he let the world spin me right out of his orbit. I replayed that scene 100 times in my head, the look on his face, the letter, my aunt's shock. It was like a movie I couldn't stop watching, even though I already knew how it ended. Maybe if I could just find the right frame, the right second where things could have gone differently, I could undo it all. But love doesn't work like that. Once suspicion enters the room, it plants roots deep enough to choke everything that once bloomed there. 2 weeks passed before I finally gathered the courage to go to his house. His mother opened the door. She smiled politely, but there was something guarded in her eyes, something that told me she already knew. "Hi, Mrs. Miller, is Ethan home?" She hesitated, her hand tightening on the doorknob. "He's not here, sweetheart. He's been keeping busy." "Could you please tell him I came by?" She nodded, but she didn't promise. I thanked her and walked back to my car, holding my breath the entire way. It wasn't until I was alone again that the tears came. Back home, Aunt Margaret had already left for Maplewood. She hugged me tightly before she went, whispering, "One day he'll see that he was wrong." I wanted to believe her, but faith is hard to hold when the person you love no longer believes in you. At night, I kept hearing his voice in my head, that low, breaking tone when he said, "I gave you my trust. That was your chance." It haunted me because I knew he wasn't entirely wrong. Trust is fragile. Once it's cracked, even truth struggles to fit back into its shape. I started writing letters I never sent, pages filled with explanations, apologies, anger, longing, all the things I couldn't say to him. Maybe it was foolish, but it helped me breathe. It made me feel like I was still reaching out through the distance, like there was still a thread connecting us, even if it was invisible. One evening, around sunset, I saw his name flash on my phone. My heart jumped so hard I could barely breathe. But when I answered, it wasn't the voice I remembered. "Lauren," he said flatly. "Ethan, thank God. Can we please talk?" "There's nothing to talk about," he replied. "You lied to me." "No, I didn't. Please, just hear me." I already heard enough. That letter said it all. "Ethan, you don't understand. It was written before you and I ever—" He cut me off. "Do you really think it matters when he wrote it? You let someone else think they still had a chance with you. That's not something you can explain away." And just like that, the line went dead. I stood there, phone still pressed to my ear, staring at the wall like it could give me the answers he refused to hear. For days after that, I carried a kind of quiet rage. Not the kind that makes you scream, but the kind that eats at you slowly, reminding you of every word you couldn't say. I wanted to shout at him, to make him see how unfair it was. I wanted to tell him how deeply it hurt to be punished for something that didn't exist. But what good is truth when love has already chosen doubt? One afternoon, I went for a walk in the park near our house. The air smelled like rain, and children's laughter drifted from somewhere in the distance. Everything looked so normal, so untouched, and I hated it for that. I sat on a bench and watched the clouds shift. I thought about the first time Ethan and I had met, how he'd told me that trust was everything to him because he'd been betrayed once before. Maybe that was my mistake. I thought my love could heal the part of him that was still afraid. I didn't realize that sometimes love just exposes the wounds we never closed. When I got home, my mother was waiting by the window. "You need to eat, sweetheart," she said softly. "You're fading away." I smiled weakly. "I'm fine, Mom." She came closer, brushing a strand of hair from my face. "You can't keep punishing yourself for someone else's doubts. If he really loves you, he'll remember who you are." I wanted to believe that, but love, once poisoned by suspicion, rarely remembers its innocence. That night, lying in bed, I whispered his name into the dark. Ethan. Just saying it out loud made something inside me ache and soften at once. I wanted to hate him for not believing me, but I couldn't. Because deep down, I still understood him. I knew the pain of imagining something you can't unsee, the way jealousy builds its own truth when love feels too fragile to trust. But knowing didn't make it hurt less. I closed my eyes, and the last image that filled my mind was his face as he tore that letter open. That single, reckless act that turned love into suspicion and suspicion into distance. And for the first time, I started to wonder if maybe he wasn't the only one who'd lost faith. Maybe I had too. A month. That's how long it had been since Ethan walked out of my life, leaving behind nothing but echoes and unanswered questions. 30 days of silence that stretched like an eternity, each one beginning with hope and ending with the same hollow ache. I told myself every morning, he just needs time. People say love doesn't disappear overnight, but I was learning that it can if silence lingers long enough to drown it. I'd call his phone sometimes, not every day, but enough that I started recognizing the rhythm of disappointment. "This number is not available at the moment," over and over, that same robotic voice. I left messages anyway, soft, pleading ones that probably sounded more like prayers than words. "Ethan, it's me. Please, I just want to talk, that's all. You don't even have to say anything, just listen." But he never called back. There were nights I couldn't sleep, when my mind wouldn't stop replaying that last moment in the living room. His face, the letter, the sound of the door closing. Sometimes I dreamed of him coming back, his eyes softer, his arms open. In the dream, he'd whisper, "I'm sorry for not believing you." But then I'd wake up, and the silence would be there, waiting like a ghost beside my bed. Aunt Margaret called one evening from Maplewood. Her voice was hesitant, heavy with guilt. "Sweetheart, I've been thinking about you every day. I just wanted to make sure you're okay." "I'm fine," I lied. She paused. "You don't sound fine." I swallowed hard. "He still won't talk to me." "Oh, Lauren," she sighed. "If only he knew how much you love him." "I tried to tell him," I said quietly. "He doesn't want to hear it." The silence that followed was filled with everything we couldn't say. Her regret, my exhaustion, the shared knowledge that love sometimes ends not with betrayal, but with misunderstanding too stubborn to heal. After we hung up, I sat by the window, watching the rain blur the streetlights. The world outside seemed so alive, people walking, cars passing, laughter spilling from somewhere far away. And yet I felt completely still, like time had stopped for me alone. Everywhere I looked, I saw reminders of him. The coffee mug he left here once, the flannel shirt I refused to wash because it still smelled faintly like his cologne. Even the park bench near my street, where we had once sat eating melting ice cream on a summer afternoon, became unbearable to pass by. Love turns ordinary things into sacred places. But once it's gone, those same places become altars of grief. My mother tried to get me out of the house. "Go see your friends," she'd say. "Watch a movie. Live your life." I nodded, but it all felt impossible. I didn't want distraction. I wanted understanding. I wanted him to see me again, Not the girl holding a letter she never asked for, but the one who loved him without question. I wrote him a long email one night. I never sent it, but I poured everything into it. The truth, the pain, the faith I still held on to. Ethan, you think I betrayed you, but all I ever did was love you. That letter wasn't my sin. It was someone else's unfinished story, trying to find its way to me. But you turned it into a crime. You let it define me. I'm still here, waiting for you to remember who I am. I read it over and over, then deleted it. He wouldn't believe me anyway. By the third week, I stopped calling. I told myself it was strength, but it was really surrender. Sometimes silence isn't just absence, it's an answer. Still, my heart didn't know how to stop loving him. It kept searching for him in small things, in the scent of pine when it rained, in the color of the sky when dusk fell, in every song that began with a piano note. One Sunday, I saw him, from afar. He was across the street, coming out of a cafe. My body reacted before my mind could. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. He looked the same, maybe a little thinner, maybe a little colder, but still him. I wanted to run to him, to grab his hand and say, "Please, just let me explain," but something in his posture stopped me. He didn't look angry anymore, just distant, unreachable, like someone who had already rewritten the story without me in it. He crossed the street, walked right past me, and didn't even turn his head. That was the moment I realized I wasn't just losing him. I'd already lost him. When I got home, I cried until my chest ached. My mother came into my room quietly and sat beside me, saying nothing. Sometimes silence is cruel, but that night, it was mercy. "Mom," I whispered finally, "what if love just isn't enough?" She brushed my hair back gently. "Love is enough, sweetheart, but only when both hearts are still open. His isn't right now." Her words didn't fix anything, but they gave shape to what I already knew. Love can't survive when one person stops listening. And Ethan, the boy who once swore he'd never let anything break us, had chosen silence over truth. So I started learning how to live inside that quiet. Some nights, I'd stand by my window, looking at the stars and whispering, "If you still love me, just think of me once." Maybe he did. Maybe he didn't. But the silence that answered back felt final. It was the kind that doesn't just separate two people. It teaches you how to live with the echo of what could have been. It's strange how silence can grow heavier over time. It doesn't fade or ease, it thickens, like fog that refuses to lift. I began to carry it with me everywhere, at work, in the grocery store, even in my dreams. It wasn't just the absence of Ethan's voice anymore. It was the absence of being understood. Every morning, I woke up hoping that day would be different, that my phone would light up with his name, that maybe he'd finally decide to listen. But each morning passed into night, and all I ever got was more proof that love alone isn't enough when trust has been broken. The worst part wasn't the loneliness. It was knowing the truth and having nowhere to put it. I wanted to explain to him, to make him see that I hadn't betrayed him, that the letter he clung to like evidence was only a shadow from a life I'd left behind. But how do you defend yourself when the person you love refuses to hear the sound of your voice? I tried writing again. Not a message, not a letter, but words for myself, fragments of the things I never got to say. I filled pages with explanations, then tore them up because they sounded like begging. I didn't want to beg for something as simple as trust. Some nights, I'd sit on the floor of my room, the same spot where Ethan used to sit when we planned our future, trips we'd take, the house we'd build, the names we'd give our kids. I could almost still hear his laughter, that soft, boyish tone that made me feel safe. It haunted me now, like a memory that didn't know it had died. People around me started to notice. My best friend, Claire, came over one afternoon. She didn't bother pretending everything was fine. "You're vanishing, Lauren," she said. "He's not even here, and he's still taking pieces of you." I looked down at my hands. "I just need him to understand." She sighed. "And if he doesn't?" I didn't answer, because I didn't know. I'd built so much of myself around what we had that imagining life without him felt like stepping into a blank page. Later that night, after Claire left, I picked up my phone again. My fingers hovered over his name. I knew I shouldn't call, but the urge was stronger than reason. I pressed dial. He answered on the third ring. His voice was tired, almost indifferent. "Lauren. Ethan. Please don't hang up. I just need 5 minutes. That's all." There was a pause. I could hear the faint sound of traffic, maybe from his car. "Go ahead," he said. The words came rushing out. "That letter, it wasn't what you think. Daniel was someone from before. I didn't ask for that message. I didn't even know it existed until Aunt Margaret gave it to me. I swear to you, Ethan, I've never cheated on you. I've never lied to you." Silence. I waited, heart pounding, every second stretching like an eternity. Finally, he spoke. "You don't get it, do you? It's not just about the letter. It's about the fact that I didn't know that part of your life existed. You said he meant nothing, but clearly he thought otherwise. Because he can't let go," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "That doesn't mean I feel the same. You're the one I love." I wish I could believe that. "Then try," I whispered. "Please, just try." But he didn't reply. I heard him exhale, a long, exhausted sigh, and then the line went dead. I sat there staring at the phone screen long after it went black, listening to the echo of what had just happened. I'd spoken the truth, but the truth doesn't matter if it's not heard. In the following days, something inside me began to shift. I still loved him. I probably always would. But I started realizing that love without trust is a prison. You spend your days defending yourself from crimes you didn't commit. You lose yourself trying to prove something that should have been believed from the beginning. One night, I wrote in my journal, "The cruelest thing isn't being unloved. It's being disbelieved by the person you love the most." That sentence stayed with me. It became a kind of truth I could hold on to when everything else slipped away. My mother noticed me writing and sat beside me. "Still thinking about him?" she asked. "Always." She took my hand. "Sometimes silence is his answer, honey. Not because you're wrong, but because he's too proud to admit he is." I looked at her, tears welling in my eyes. I just wanted to be heard. "I know," she said softly. "But some hearts don't know how to listen until it's too late." I went to bed that night feeling both lighter and sadder. There's a strange kind of peace that comes when you accept you can't force someone to understand you. It's the peace of surrender, quiet, fragile, but real. Still, even in that acceptance, the ache remained. Because love, even when it dies, keeps its own rhythm. It beats quietly in the background, a memory disguised as a heartbeat. And as I lay there staring into the dark, I realized that maybe this was the truest kind of heartbreak. Not losing someone's love, but losing the space where your truth used to live. Because now, no matter how loudly I spoke, Ethan would never really hear me again. I used to think love was supposed to be unconditional. That if two people truly cared for each other, they'd always find their way back, no matter what storm tore through their lives. But now I know. Love only survives when it's protected by trust. Without it, even the deepest love slowly bleeds out, one misunderstanding at a time. Weeks had passed since I last heard Ethan's voice. His silence had become its own kind of language. Cold, deliberate, and final. I'd stopped calling. I'd stopped waiting by the phone. But no matter how much I tried to move forward, I couldn't silence the voice inside me that whispered, "He never gave you the chance to speak. He never heard you." Every night, I prayed he'd remember the way we were before the letter, how he'd hold me like the world could end and it wouldn't matter as long as we were together. I prayed he'd recall how I laughed when he sang off-key in the car, how I'd catch him watching me like he couldn't believe I was real. Those memories were my proof that love had once lived here. But memory isn't enough to keep love alive. It only keeps the ghost of it breathing. One evening, after another long day of pretending I was fine, I found myself walking through the park where we'd once spent so many Sundays. The leaves were turning gold and red, the air crisp with the smell of autumn. I sat on our bench, his side still marked by the faint scratch where he'd carved our initials months ago. I ran my fingers over the letters, tracing them like a prayer. L+E. Two small symbols that once held a lifetime of promises. A part of me still wanted to believe in those promises, so I whispered into the wind, "If you still love me, please remember who I am." I stayed there until the light faded and the world turned blue. For the first time, I didn't cry. There were no tears left, just a quiet understanding that I couldn't keep loving him for both of us. When I got home, my mother was waiting by the door, her face soft with concern. "You've been gone for hours," she said. "Were you with him?" I shook my head. "No, I was with what's left of us." She nodded slowly, her eyes glistening. Sometimes that's the hardest person to walk away from, the version of love that still lives in your mind. That night I opened my journal again. I wrote not to him, but to myself. Love deserves more than silence. It deserves faith, even when doubt is easier. It deserves two hearts willing to listen, not just one trying to shout across the distance. When I read it back, I felt something inside me shift. It wasn't healing, not yet, but it was strength. A few days later, I saw his car parked near my street. For a moment, my heart stopped. Part of me thought, he came back. I almost ran outside. But then I saw him through the window, sitting behind the wheel, head resting against the seat, eyes closed. He looked tired, lost. I wanted to knock on the glass, to tell him it wasn't too late. But then he opened his eyes, looked straight ahead, and drove away. No goodbye, no explanation. Just another chapter closing in silence. That was when I finally understood what love truly deserves. It deserves clarity. It deserves courage. It deserves the grace to say, "I was wrong," or "I forgive you." But what it never deserves is pride. The kind that lets two people who still love each other drift apart just to avoid saying, "I'm sorry." I thought about all the times I'd chosen love over ego. The times I'd said sorry just to keep the peace, even when I wasn't wrong. Maybe that was my mistake. Maybe love isn't just about holding on. Maybe it's about knowing when to stop fighting for someone who no longer fights for you. I began to write again, but this time, not letters of pleading. I wrote about the kind of love I wanted, the kind that listens, that heals, that doesn't punish you for the ghosts of your past. I wrote until dawn, filling pages with hopes I wasn't sure I still believed in. I want a love that trusts, a love that doesn't need proof to believe in my heart, a love that doesn't turn my honesty into evidence against me. When the sun rose, I closed the notebook and finally smiled. It wasn't a happy smile, not yet, but it was the kind that comes when you start to make peace with what you cannot change. Ethan still hadn't called. Maybe he never would. But for the first time, I wasn't waiting for him to. Because love, real love, deserves to be met halfway. And if he couldn't take one step toward me, then maybe this was how the universe teaches us to walk away with grace. I still loved him, but I also knew something deeper now. Love is not supposed to be a punishment. It's not supposed to make you question your worth or beg to be believed. That night, before sleeping, I whispered a quiet goodbye into the dark. Not to him, but to the version of myself that kept waiting for his forgiveness. and for the first time in weeks, I slept through the night. Not because the pain was gone, but because I was finally learning that peace doesn't always come when love returns. Sometimes it comes when you finally stop asking for what love should have given you all along. There comes a moment, after all the tears and all the waiting, when you realize the only conversation left to have is the one you'll never get to speak out loud. That was me, sitting at my desk one quiet night, a single sheet of paper in front of me, the lamp casting a soft golden light over everything I hadn't said. I told myself I wasn't writing to him anymore, but I was. The pen felt heavy in my hand, trembling as if it knew what it carried. Not anger, not even longing anymore, but truth. The kind of truth that has nowhere else to go except onto a page. So I began. Ethan, I'm not writing to change your mind or to make you come back. I'm writing because I can't keep holding these words inside me anymore. They've been echoing in my chest for too long. The words spilled like water after that, quiet and unstoppable. I still love you. But I've learned that love isn't enough when one heart shuts itself off from the other. You wanted proof of my innocence, something tangible, something that could erase your doubt. But all I ever had to offer was my word. You didn't believe it. And that's what broke me. I paused, feeling the weight of every sentence before continuing. You once told me that love means choosing the same person, even when it's hard. I kept choosing you, Ethan, even when you walked away. I chose you when the silence grew heavy. I chose you when everyone told me to move on. But love shouldn't be a one-sided vow, and I can't keep choosing someone who refuses to even listen. I looked at the clock. It was almost midnight. Outside, the world was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels sacred, like it's listening. I took a deep breath and kept writing. That letter you read wasn't a confession of guilt. It was a relic from another life, a chapter I'd closed long before you came along. I wish you could have trusted that. I wish you could have looked at me and remembered who I was before jealousy turned me into a stranger in your eyes. A tear slipped down my cheek and fell onto the paper, smudging the ink. I didn't wipe it away. Maybe one day you'll find this, and maybe you won't. But if you do, I hope you see it for what it is, not an apology, but a truth that never found its listener. I set the pen down. My hand ached, but it felt good, the kind of ache that comes from release. For the first time, I didn't cry after writing to him. Instead, I felt calm. The ache was still there, but it wasn't sharp anymore. It was gentle, like the dull hum of something finally coming to an end. I folded the paper carefully, placed it in an envelope, and wrote his name on the front, Ethan Miller. I didn't seal it. I knew I never would. It wasn't meant to be sent. It was meant to be closure. Later that week, I went for a drive. The air was crisp, the sky washed in pale gold. I ended up in Maplewood, without really meaning to. Maybe part of me wanted to go back to where everything began, to that town full of childhood summers, laughter, and, ironically, the letter that ended everything. I parked near the old bus stop where Aunt Margaret had once met Daniel, the man whose words had torn my life apart without meaning to. For a long time, I just sat there, thinking about how strange it is that people can affect your fate without ever intending harm. I whispered softly, "You didn't ruin me, Daniel. You just revealed who was willing to believe in me and who wasn't." I got out of the car and walked to the small bridge that crossed the river nearby. The water shimmered, carrying leaves and reflections downstream. I pulled the envelope from my coat pocket, looked at it one last time, and smiled. These are the words he never heard, I thought. And maybe that's okay. Then I let it go. The wind caught it gently, and the letter drifted down into the water, spinning once before vanishing into the current. Watching it disappear felt like watching a part of myself finally be set free. The part that had been trapped, waiting to be understood. As I stood there, the sun began to set, painting the sky in soft shades of pink and amber. For the first time in months, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel guilty. I felt clean, as if the universe had finally exhaled with me. I whispered one last time, not in anger, but in peace. "Goodbye, Ethan." There was no answer, but I didn't need one anymore. On the drive home, I rolled the windows down. The wind tangled my hair, and I laughed, quietly, almost to myself. It wasn't joy, not yet, but it was something close to freedom. I realized then that love isn't about holding on until it hurts. Sometimes it's about letting go with grace, releasing the weight of being misunderstood, forgiving the silence that never gave you a chance to speak. And even though Ethan would never hear the words I'd written, I knew they had finally found their place. They belonged to me now, to my healing, to my peace. And for the first time since the day he tore that letter open, I finally felt whole again. If this story touched your heart, if you've ever loved someone who stopped listening, take a moment to leave a comment below. Tell me what part of Lauren's story resonated with you the most. Your words help keep this space alive, where every heartbreak becomes a lesson and every silence becomes a story worth telling. Don't forget to subscribe, give this video a like, and share it with someone who still believes that love deserves to be heard. And before you go, remember, sometimes closure isn't the end. It's the beginning of your own healing. I'll see you in the next story. A new journey of love, loss, and awakening. Until then, keep your heart open and your soul listening.